Welcome to the Keeping IT Real podcast. This podcast features honest and transparent conversations about what it takes to manage corporate technology and expenses today. Each episode, listen to true and personal stories from IT professionals who are working hard to make sure their business stays connected and competitive. I'm your host, Jethro Castillo, and let's meet our next guest. Today, I'm joined by Curt Moreno, a director of IT services. Curt has over 20 years of experience in the world of IT, amongst other things, managing network and mobile operations, driving strategic IT initiatives, and fostering collaboration to ensure seamless support for production and administrative teams. Curt, thanks for being on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, I introduced you, but I think everyone knows themselves better than someone else could know them. So why don't you kind of open up with an introduction about yourself the way you kind of like being introduced?
So my name is Curt Moreno. I was born and raised in Texas. I started my professional career when I was still in high school, and that began with CAD drafting. So I immediately started my career and moved into the world of CAD drafting, first in security and fire. Then I moved to a more professional state where I was working in oil and gas. And then finally, I moved into civil, and I've been in the civil engineering industry since time began. And I've worked my way up the production side of engineering or civil engineering. Now, I'm not an engineer myself, but I've seen all the ups and downs and ins and outs. And then I moved into administration, where I began to lead an IT team, and then I became a director.
Was it always love at first sight? Is this always kind of the avenue that you wanted to go down, or did you kind of fall into this in a different way?
You know, people ask me that, and I'm going to give you two answers on that. One, I'm very strongly of the belief that nobody plans to grow up to be middle management. Not a lot of 5-year-olds are telling their mothers when they tuck them in at night, "Mommy, I want to grow up to fill out TPS reports." Secondly, a job is a job. Some days you have good days and some days you have bad days. It's always been where I've gravitated towards because I'm a natural nerd. But could I have been born on the side of a mountain and enjoyed being a Sherpa just as much? Maybe. You know, I could be the world's greatest fat Sherpa. You don't know.
I'm laughing because you have a very unique way of looking at life, and it's very refreshing, and it's very interesting, and it's very unique.
I'm going to tell you, when you have done things like been left on a oil platform overnight because the helicopter forgot to come and get you, or you slept on a ditch being afraid that you were going to be carried away by Louisiana mosquitoes, you develop a certain outlook on life.
Okay. Yeah. You know what? It makes sense. It all adds up. It all adds up. It all adds up.
It's all about context.
So 100%. Well, I'm curious now. I feel like any question is just going to be entertaining. I want to hear from you. What does your day-to-day look like in this job that is placed in front of you?
So day to day, and I was just writing about this in my work journal. Right now, the company that I've been with for 25 years was recently acquired. So my day to day has completely changed. Prior to acquisition, come to work, check on my team, think about the immediate needs, the fires that I can just reach out and actually burn my fingertips on. Hopefully there are none, but usually there are. And those are the things that require immediate attention. My policy, working for an engineering firm, and like most engineering firms, we're service oriented. That means that we have to sing and dance for every dollar that comes into this company. We don't have products like Microsoft has Office that we get regular recurring license revenue from. So our engineers have to be able to work and design and meet with people and send out completed projects in order for us to get paid. And even that's not enough. We have to make sure that things are working so that our back end, our accounting and our HR can make sure that we're getting paid and that people are getting paid. That all relies on the infrastructure of our company, which is my responsibility. And because of that, the motto of my team is that production in this company can never stop, ever. If I could run this company 24 hours a day, we would run it 24 hours a day. Because if we're down for half an hour or an hour, if it's an office or just one person, that's X number of dollars that are not being generated. So it's not just the downtime, it's actually a double or triple negative. So that all comes out. And sometimes, just like any IT team, I've got a group of, let's call them unusually antisocial people. And they don't communicate very well outside of our group. Okay. You have to understand, it's like talking to a dolphin. You have to understand the clicks and squeaks, and suddenly you understand this as an immensely intelligent animal. But until you learn the clicks and squeaks, he's just kind of big and smelly. So I tell them production can never stop here. Well, what does it matter to me if an engineer can't get a plan out? Well, what it matters is that, that could cause a delay in payment, which is going to hit us directly in terms of quarterly bonuses, in terms of reviews, in terms of year-end 401 contributions. The company's not going to give us money that the company doesn't have. So we have to make sure that everything is working, that everybody has the tools to do their jobs so that everybody can do their jobs and the company can not only sustain itself, but also grow. So a lot of future tracking, a lot of day-to-day immediate needs. But now that we've been acquired, all of that has come to a halt. My entire list of projects that we were working on and planning to work on, that I was doing research for, that I was talking to vendors about, getting quotes on, that's all on indefinite hold. So now my day-to-day is gathering information, having to go back and document all the little flubs that we make, that we say to ourselves, oh, you know what? I forgot to enter that asset, but I'm going to come back and do it later. And then next week we say, oh, I forgot to do it. I'm going to do it later. And in a month we go, no one's ever going to notice. When you get acquired, they notice. Like so many IT people, I'm a creature of habit. My team is a creature or are creatures of habit. So making this upside down twist, it's caused a lot of unusual feelings and uncertainty that we didn't have before.
Yeah. And I think that segues quite nicely into my next question, which is kind of, with everything changing, the challenges that you had before you were acquired are so different now, like you said, right? That all of that halted and it's something different. So what are the challenges that you're facing in your role right now, and what are you tackling? How are you tackling it? And then when the acquisition becomes normal, what goes off pause?
Yeah, that's a really good question too, because so many things. Well, first of all, an acquisition, and I'm actually thinking about writing a book about this, because acquisitions are so commonplace in the American economy. I think more and more of us are going to fall victim to them, but nobody wants to talk about them. On a personal level, everybody wants to talk about the macro of Broadcom bought VMware, or, so-and-so bought so-and-so, but nobody wants to talk about well, how does that affect me? Like, I'm just a dude, or I'm just a lady. Like, I gotta, this is my job, man. Like, I gotta have a paycheck to feed my kids and pay the rent, So, communication, everybody thinks an acquisition is about finance, but it needs to be about communication. My greatest challenge right now is communicating with the team through a brick wall, because we haven't been integrated yet. And I have limited exposure to them, because not only do they have their own jobs to do, but their company is much larger. Well, not they, we are one team now, but my job is to make sure that the company that I was working for still operates and is profitable as a unit. So they still have their job before the acquisition. I have my job before the acquisition. But now, in addition to that, we have to meet each other. It's almost like an arranged marriage. Okay. It's not an interview. They didn't interview me and decide that they wanted to bring me in and be part of the team. They were told that we're acquiring this company and these people are going to be joining the team. We, as the acquisee, as the victim, or as the purchase, we kind of take a subservient role to their larger team. We're being integrated into their team. So there has to be some decision on their part about where we fit in, what roles we'll be playing. And I will tell you this, in the acquisition that I'm involved in, I'm very grateful, immensely grateful that this has not so far turned out to be the stereotypical acquisition that you hear about in the media or in Hollywood. They didn't come in and say 50% of the company is fired. They've been very welcoming, very supportive, telling us that everybody here has a job as we integrate into the new company, because they didn't buy us because they needed work. They didn't buy us because we were bankrupt. They bought us because we were an engineering firm that was billing tens of millions of dollars a year, had, several years of backlog projects worth of contracts. And so do they. If everybody from this company left, who would do the work? So they need us to stay and be a profitable unit and keep this place running as we integrate. What does that mean? That means that you have all the work you had before and now some extra. But a big chunk of that extra has to be communication.
What does this mean for your current tech stack? You had mentioned that you were looking at new vendors for new solutions, and that had to be on pause. Like how much are you just sitting and waiting and not sure what to do because there's a lot of change?
You want to know the truth about a tech stack and an acquisition? You absolutely have to be ready to kill your darlings. I spent several years building a tech stack and a set of vendors that really work for us. A set of technology that, while not perfect, and by no means am I a mastermind, I really felt would scale, would afford us elasticity for people to work remotely. A set of vendors that, and I wrote about this on my website, I'm done with vendors. If you're going to be a vendor, get the hell out of my office. I need partners. Okay. I need people who are force multipliers, because I have a very small IT team, and most of my guys are boots on the ground, installing, fixing, keeping this machine running. Okay. So when I start looking for a new solution, I need people who are going to bring me solutions and help me vet them. Okay. And like I said, that's what I feel are force multipliers. Okay. Somebody who says, hey, I've got a whole team of Microsoft licensing experts. If you bring your Microsoft licensing to me, not only am I going to sell you Microsoft licenses, I'm going to help you weed it down to what you need. I'm going to help you pick the best, most affordable options, because I'm going to tell you what, whoever is in charge of Microsoft licensing has a multiple personality disorder. Like, that dude needs medication. Okay. Because it changes hour to hour. It's sickening. I don't know how anybody keeps track of that. It's like trying to pick up wet spaghetti. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? Just leave it alone for a week. So I don't have time. I'm not a Microsoft expert. I'm not a Cisco expert. I'm no kind of expert of any kind. But what I can do is I have a very strong instinctual drive to be able to pick people who can help me because they have those assets. I know I can call James and he's going to call Bill, and we're going to have a really in-depth Microsoft licensing conversation. That type of thing, which if I had to do it all myself would take a lot longer. I don't want vendors. If you're just going to sell me something and tell me to go to hell, then I'm not buying from you. I can do that at Walmart. I can do that at Amazon. Okay. But in exchange for that, I also have to be willing to not always get the cheapest price.
Yeah.
You can't build a lasting relationship with a long-term account executive who's going to be there to help you and expect to screw him on every deal. I used to tell my partners, look, I understand you need to make money on this. So I'm not going to grill you on this project, but the one that's coming up, we're going to get down into the single digits. Okay. I mean, I want as close to wholesale as I can get for this, but in exchange for that, I'm not going to press you on this, which means you also have to have a fair understanding of pricing. The more aware you are of what wholesale is, the closer you can get to it, while still understanding that you can't fault anybody for making money. Okay. He needs to get paid. Okay. I don't know if you've ever watched American Gods, but there's a line where Mr. Wednesday tells the main character, okay, here's some money, go get this, and try not to take more than 10% for yourself. And he says, I'm not going to keep your money. He goes, how do I know I can trust you if you don't take an honest 10% off the top? And there's a lot of truth to that. Jethro, if you come to me and you say, I'm going to do something for you completely free that's very valuable, I have to look at you and go, what the hell do you want? Like, what's in this for you? But if you come to me and say, hey, I'm going to do something for you, and just so you know, my business model is I make 5% off of that, well, then let's go to town. I need you to stay in business. Otherwise, I'm just going to go from vendor to vendor.
This was actually something I've been talking about quite a bit with a few people, because we were talking about 2025 and what awaits us in 2025. And it's like, it's post-COVID. We're no longer just trying to cut costs. We're trying to increase the value that we provide to our business, right? Additionally, AI is in the mix. Cybersecurity is way more prevalent than ever before. And now we're at a place where people are like, we need to buy, but I'm scared to buy because I feel like it's just going to change 3 months from now, 6 months from now. And they said exactly what you said. I don't want to buy a vendor. I want to buy a partner who will evolve and adapt with me and will let me know which solutions I need to remain and stay competitive. I don't want to buy a vendor and just, like you said, just let that be, screw me over. I want to buy a relationship that I can trust that will grow with my needs.
One of the things I've come to realize is that as you move up, I hate to say this, but as you move up the ladder, you're responsible for more, but less is your job. Okay. Because when you're the bottom person, you're not actually responsible for much, but you got a hell of a lot to do. Okay? Nobody's the CEO. You've never heard of a earnings report where, Jeff Bezos said, well, Amazon lost $3.5 billion because Curt in shipping forgot to buy stamps. Okay. Nobody ever said that. So what happens is that as you move up, your purview of responsibility increases exponentially. But what you do actually almost exponentially narrows because you're supposed to delegate. You have direct reports. Okay. And people should view their external partners the same way. Those partners are direct reports to you in a different fashion, but in the same vein. When it comes to budgeting and purchasing, too many people, especially in an industry with personalities that can be abrupt or cold like IT, too many people are too anxious to focus on the box when they should be focusing on the delivery man. Okay. Yes, what you want is in the box, but the person that carries the box is the one that really makes the difference. When I sold cars, I very quickly realized that there were 100 other dealerships that made Mazda, that sold Mazda cars. I sold Mazdas. They all had the same models. They all had similar prices. Okay. But what they didn't have was me. I was the thing that my dealership had that no other dealership had. Okay. But dealerships don't invest and elevate their salespeople. They use them as mechanisms like conveyor belts. They think though they're too enamored with the product, the box, to realize that what's important is the delivery man.
That's a really unique way to look at that as well. And I guess really shows the evolution that is happening within the world of IT for sure. We need those partners. We need those, like you said, they become your shareholders or stakeholders, the people that you need to kind of manage within.
I was thinking about how back in the days of mainframes and when computers were rarities, people could get away with just showing up, working on the machine, not talking to anybody, not being social. And it was the beginning of basically the pocket protector nerd. I don't have social skills, so I deal with machines and technology. But as time has gone on, our technology first progressed to PCs, then mobile devices. And while I'm not as bullish as most people about AI, there's no denying that the technology is more conversant and more easily handled by the average person. IT, in terms of personnel and practices, has to do the same. Our tools have become more communicative, so we have to become more communicative. We have to learn the soft skills that our industry has for decades been able to skirt and avoid.
So with that being said, and that is true, right? Now we're no longer just order takers. We want to have a seat at the table, and we help kind of drive the direction of the business. What are your thoughts on that? Like, how did it evolve to that? And two, like, what should IT people do?
For the past, let's just say from the 60s until the 10s. So for the past 50 years, IT set the table. We made sure there were enough chairs. We made sure that seats. We made sure that everybody had the right plateware. Okay, the right utensils to eat their meal, and that everybody, if a chair fell apart or if somebody showed up and there weren't enough seats, that was a problem at a dinner party. Same thing at a network. Okay, it's a really good analogy now that I think about our metaphor. Now that I think about it.
Yep.
Okay, but here's the thing: somewhere in these past 10 years, what's being put on the table is so delicious that now we want a seat at the table. We don't just want to set the table, we want to sit at the table. But if you're going to sit at the table, you have to learn how to be a good guest. You need to learn how to be a good conversationalist. Okay, how to be witty and have banter. To be able to say, oh, James, yes, last year I was in the Poconos, but I thought this year I'll go to Niagara. Okay, because nobody wants to go to a party and be a wallflower. What's the point? Okay, if you're not going to show up and be Cinderella, then keep your ass at home. So where does that fit into IT? Well, it means that we need to stop just being ones and zeros and understand that the world also has vowels and consonants. Okay, and it's hard. Soft skills get a really bad rap as being too woke, too mushy, too feely. Can't you just do your job? But think about all the people who are these exemplary, like, masters of industry. They're all people who didn't just have a good idea. Everybody has good ideas. Okay. Good ideas are like toes. You're born with 10 of them. Okay. But they were able to communicate a good idea. All right.
Yeah.
Wozniak communicated a good idea to Jobs, who was able to then take that and make it flourish because he was the front man. Ford was able to communicate that to financiers 2 times before Ford Industry, and then finally Ford Motors. He had to get people who would invest in him. Okay. Now we have to communicate it to people to just even support our ideas before they can flourish, and we can find investors, or we can find an incubator or something like that. I'm going to tell you right now, if I knew how to turn ideas into products, I would be so rich that we wouldn't even be having this conversation. But that's a skill I lack. Okay. But I am fortunate that I have 2 skills in life, and one being incredibly adaptable, and 2, that I can tell a pretty decent story. Okay. I can communicate an idea and stay one step ahead of whoever it is that I'm communicating to. If you teach me a foreign language and we finish lesson 2, I can turn around and teach lesson 1 to somebody else. And as long as I stay one lesson ahead of somebody else in Cantonese, I'm going to have my own students. Okay. That's what we need, is flexibility, adaptation, communication. And you know what? Empathy. How many IT people do you know in the industry that just have zero empathy for the users? They have the curse of knowledge where they forgot what it's like to be somebody learning something new.
Yeah. Absolutely. On that note, we talk a lot about the past and a lot about the future, I guess, but we've talked about what's it like for your company in the future, but I guess to step back, IT in general, what is kind of what excites you about the future of IT and tech? What concerns you about the future of IT and tech? One of them, like you said, is we need to be at the seat of the table. We need to develop those soft skills as IT professionals. But, what other trends, what should we be looking out for with IT and tech?
So I think one of the things that excites me the most about IT is the mainstream of it. That IT is no longer this black magic that's practiced by wizards in dark caves entirely. I'm sure there's still some wizards out there. But for instance, and like I can admit it, I stream, and just like everybody else who streams Netflix, I was watching a true crime thing. And they got to a point in the investigation, and one of the cops says, "It turns out we needed an IT guy." And I was like, "Oh, IT for the win,
Represent.
right?" And the IT guy came in and like busted the riddle that they were able to find out who committed the crime. But you hear more and more about IT. There was Mr. Robot, was a very successful drama that was an amazing representation of computer technology and its darker, real applicable side. Okay. So people no longer think entirely that I have a keyboard and everything that happens beyond my keyboard is magic. Okay. Because you're in IT, you're not necessarily a magician. And look at the diversification of IT. IT just used to be, bring the monitor in, monkey, and plug it and then go away. Okay. We were dollies with feet. Now, you have big data specialists. We have analysts of every make and flavor. We have people that are creating new AI large language models on an hourly basis. The world is so diverse, and we become so much more aware of each other that I think that proliferation is really exciting. And like I said, my mom was reading a book the other day, an IT thriller. And I mean, this is a woman who couldn't program a VCR in the 80s. She used to hit record at 8:00 in the morning so that it would record her soap operas at noon, hit the end of the tape, rewind and eject. And when she got back home, she would push it in and fast forward to 12. Okay. I don't know how we're related. I asked, "Are you sure we're related?" She's like, "I was there when you were born." I'm like, "Okay, I'm going to have to take your word for it."
I like that. It's the idea. It's the proliferation, right? It's that tech and IT is everything. It feels like that's what it's becoming.
Well, and so here's the caveat to that is that that means that we're in a very dangerous time. We're in a time when more people know just enough to cause more problems than ever before in the history of man. Okay. There was a time when people who built stone buildings, masons, kept the art of stonework a secret. Okay. It was a very tightly held secret because they controlled the means of production, and people beyond them didn't really understand how you build a cathedral. But then at some point, somebody, picked up a hammer and started chipping on a rock. And that was the beginning of the democratization of construction. But there were a hell of a lot of smashed thumbs between a cathedral and, a skyscraper. Just think of all the people who died in construction accidents between those two epochs of human history. We're in that gray period of complete awe and misunderstanding. And, what happens when I right click on this? Okay. So we have a lot of maturation before the mainstream is going to be able to really take advantage of the technological tools that our forefathers built and start building digital skyscrapers. Okay. The Wozniaks of the world built the cathedrals, the IBMs that switched from typewriters to mainframes built the cathedrals. Okay. We're not building digital skyscrapers right now. We're still smashing thumbs. But think about what the world will be like once enough people in the mainstream become technically capable. Maybe we'll finally get our Jetsons flying car.
Yeah. All right. 2 more questions for you. 1, moving forward, what are your biggest priorities and challenges that you're looking to tackle, whether for the business or personally?
I'm always learning. The number one priority for me is to always be learning. I read between 30 and 50 books a year. Most of them are incredibly boring business nonfiction books. Like just give me the most boring answer. The best book I've read in recent years was about cargo containers. The challenges that I have is the safe transition of my team from the company that we were to the company that we're going to. I take an immense amount of pride in the work that my team does, and I care for them because if I don't look out for them, well, as a manager, I should look out for them. Okay. I take my role as a manager pretty seriously and, try to help my team not just get the job done, but also grow their careers. And now that we've been acquired, that means that I want them to land in the best possible position that they can.
That is kind of how you answer the question when there's so much unknown, right? It's, I'm going to do what I can to shield and protect my people from.
And I think a lot of it too, and this is my problem is that it's so much easier for me to shield and protect my team than it is for me to do it on a personal level. I've always found it easier to care for others and tend to others than it is to tend to myself. So my wife will sometimes tell me is like, well, if you're going to give that person so much leeway or grace, why can't you take it easy on yourself?
Yeah. Okay. This is the last question for you.
Last question.
And it is just that soapbox. Over the course of your career, what are some of the most important lessons that you've learned that you'd kind of like to share with the audience today?
The most important lessons I ever learned, I learned when we owned a farm. My friends and I owned a horse farm. And when you work with an animal that is somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 pounds, that could literally crush you to death, and you're trying to make it do something that it does not want to do, or sometimes even worse, that it's afraid to do, you understand your place in the machine. And you understand that you have to change the context. Okay. You can't make the horse understand something different. The horse, as intelligent and emotional as those animals are, and they really are, they don't understand English. My dog doesn't understand English. Okay. They recognize some words about as much as I recognize some French words, but I don't speak French. So when you're angry about something because a machine won't work, or something in your life isn't working, or that person won't do what you want, you can't expect them to change. You have to change your context, your approach, your understanding, and sometimes even your goals. And if you don't, you're never going to reach any kind of success, because I read about this somewhere. I do so much writing that I forget where I wrote, but here's when two people are arguing as a manager, you have to come together and say, one, is this constructive conflict or is it destructive conflict? Not all conflict is bad. And as a society, we're mistaken to think that it is, but that's how we're trained. We want a zero conflict world. Wrong. Conflict can drive us to be the best that we can in certain cases. And if that's the case, bicker on, do your thing. If it makes you push, and I know one of you is going to be number one and one of you is going to be number two, then have at it. But if it's destructive, if it's personal, then the first thing you have to do is break it up. And the second thing you have to do is explain to everybody involved, the best we're going to achieve is to agree to disagree. That's the best this becomes. We're not going to get 100. We're hoping for 75. Okay. Once you set a reasonable goal and make them understand that you're not going to change his mind about politics, about religion, about, less filling tastes great. All right. Once you make them understand that all you can do is calmly share your opinion and then accept that he doesn't agree with you and he'll do the same or she'll do the same, then you understand the best we can do is to agree to disagree. And if we did that more in life, I think we would have a lot less Karens. I think we would have a lot less posts in our public freakout. I think we would have a lot less road rage. It's a little bit about understanding that the world is complex and that you're not going to always get what you want.
Yeah. Well, Curt, thank you so much for your time today. This was an awesome conversation.
Well, thank you.
You have quite the sense of humor, I will say, quite the storytelling sense of humor. I can tell you do right with the way that you're very witty and you have a lot of quips. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that you do mention that you do write a lot. And I just feel like anyone who does get to read and anyone who gets to be led by you just gets to have a very entertaining time. So I just wanted to say thank you for your energy and your perspective.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to have the conversation.
We hope you enjoyed this Keeping IT Real episode, and thank you for listening. Make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. This podcast is all about celebrating and connecting professional heroes who work hard at IT every day. To continue the conversation and learn how VCOM can help you better buy, manage, and pay for your technology, visit us at vcomsolutions.com. Until next time.